Hello and welcome to the Ravens Brawl podcast, a part of the Brawl Network. I'm your host, Dave Stomwittle. First time we actually get to see each other as we do this. I wish it was under better circumstances, but we are discussing what happened against the Tennessee Titans. I'm your host, Dave Stomwittle. The co-host number one, Joe Schiller. How you doing, buddy?
I don't know, man. I usually say I'm doing really well, but I'd be lying if I was. So we've been doing this for, I think this is the 12th episode now, and they've won every game that we've done a podcast for. And there's just a lot to hash out. I'd like to say I'm in a good mood, but we know things are not good. We know things are not good. So
yeah, it's not pretty. So we're gonna try our best to get through it. We're gonna break down everything that happened in that game, and we'll try to move forward. This is brutal. I don't know what else to say. I was very disappointed after watching that game on Saturday night. To stay up to 11:30, Joe, to watch that is certainly not what I wanted to do with my Saturday night. But let's get to the ad reads first. So let's get to the bearsbrawl.com/fanatics. Fanatics is a great sponsor. They got all sorts of deals on stuff. You can go to the bearsbrawl.com/fanatics and you'll check out. They got great deals. They hook us up so we can hook you up. So make sure you go help out our friends over there at fanatics.com. And Joe,
yeah, I mean, it was just weird. I would just describe it as weird. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, it was. We had such high expectations, and I know we had Sarah on last week talking about this, and we all predicted the Ravens win, and we're not the only ones here. I was looking at some of the statistics on this game, and the Ravens were one of the biggest favorites in playoff history coming into this game. You got the number 1 seed against the number 6 seed, and I get the Tennessee Titans were rolling pretty hot, but I didn't think that hot. But apparently so. Apparently they're the hottest team in football. I mean, taking on the Patriots and now the Ravens, it was just a weird game. I don't really know how else to describe it. I think they punt on the first drive. The Ravens are driving down the field, looking like you're about to take a 7-0 lead. And Lamar Jackson's pass to Mark Andrews is just a little bit high, tips off his hands and lands right into the hands of Kevin Byard. The Titans score. The Ravens turn over the ball on 4th down, and then the Titans score again. And you look twice, and you're down 14-0. It was just everything that could happen, that could go wrong for the Ravens went wrong. The team that was so sound on 4th downs, I think they were 8 for 8 on 4th and 1s throughout the entire season, went 0 for 2 on 4th and 1s. Just everything that they could have done wrong went wrong, and the Titans beat the Ravens at their own game. We talked about it last week about how the Ravens can match up physically and dominate this team, and what I saw was a complete opposite of the other team doing. My credit to Mike Vrabel and the Titans, by the way. They came in with a fantastic game plan and shut the Ravens offense down and just ran the crap out of the ball with Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill was not – I mean, he has not been anything special in the playoffs, but he's done just enough. It reminds me of some of the old Ravens teams with Joe Flacco. You don't have to do a lot with the quarterback when you've got a guy like Derrick Henry who's just running you over with the ball. He is really something else. I think there were a lot of people who were skeptical about him, but man, he has really come along and is, I mean, in my opinion, got to be considered one of the top running backs, if not the top running back in the NFL right now. So there's a lot I know we'll dive into, but for me, it's just there were such high expectations, and it's almost, I think a lot of us were really just looking forward to who we play in the AFC Championship game. I mean, I kind of had that mindset. I'll be completely honest. I mean, my dad was going with my brother to this game, and I was like, all right, just let me know, like, when are we going to meet up next week before the AFC Championship game? It's just that's that mindset. When you win 12 straight games and you're the number 1 seed and you're the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, you just have those kind of expectations. And in my opinion, this is one of the most disappointing losses as far as playoffs go. I was at the 2006 Divisional Round loss to the Colts, which was very disappointing, but you lost to a Hall of Fame quarterback and a Hall of Fame kicker at the time. So I guess maybe I'm just bad luck. I went to the Chargers game last year too, so maybe just any time I come around playoff-wise, I'm just terrible luck. But
don't go.
Yeah,
don't go.
Maybe not. But to me, this was just a weird game and felt eerily similar to last year's game, just as far as Lamar Jackson's struggles and just frustrations we saw on both sides of the ball. So, Dave, I know we've kind of talked about this throughout the week, so I'll let you chime in and rant all you need to about this.
All right, so first things first, I'm like you. All the credit goes to the Tennessee Titans. I thought they had an excellent game plan. They were well prepared, well coached. They matched up a lot really well with the Ravens. I thought that was something a little concerning that you got to worry about that they seem to match up and play a Raven style of football, but a lot of credit to Dean Pease. Excellent game plan. And really, this is a team that has the identity of their head coach. Mike Vrabel is very much aggressive, physical, and that's what this Titan team was. They really adopted Mike Vrabel's mindset, and you could just see that on Saturday. Right from the word go, it was bam, right in the mouth of the Ravens. And you could see the Ravens were not ready to play. So a lot of credit goes to the Tennessee Titans. I said on the other podcast we do, Joe, that I think the Titans can go to Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. So that I really do believe that they are that good as long as Derrick Henry gets going, and you don't need Ryan Tannehill to do a lot. You talk about it reminds you of some of the Joe Flacco team. This reminds me a lot of the 2000 Ravens, except they don't have a great defense behind it. But they had the 2000 Ravens and Tannehill doing just enough with this Titan team, and that's kind of what Trent Dilfer was, where you didn't need Trent Dilfer to throw the ball 30 times. You didn't need him to throw for 130, just not make a mistake. And that's basically what the Tennessee Titans are right now. So I give a lot of credit to the Titans first off, and a lot of my criticism, Joe, and we'll get into it more, will fall on the coaching staff as a whole. It was a lousy game plan. But I want to ask you, what are the people that are blaming Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, that's if you're blaming Lamar Jackson, I feel you just didn't either watch the game or you just didn't pay attention enough. Lamar, I'm not saying that Lamar doesn't deserve criticism for this game because he threw 2 interceptions and fumbled. I mean, we've seen 2 of his worst losses have come in the playoffs now, and he's going to have that narrative and that's surrounding him that he can't win big games when they're even. And Marlon Humphrey said it. The narrative around this team is when you get into the playoffs, we choke. And I mean, are you going to argue with that? You've seen it the past 2 years, but Lamar still put up, I think it was over 500 yards of total offense, which is just absolutely absurd that you scored 12 points doing that. I agree with you that a lot of blame does fall on the coaching staff with the game plan, and I felt that given the circumstances, they did fall behind early, and I think that caused some cause for concern that they just completely abandoned the run game. When you have, I get Mark Ingram isn't 100%, but when you still have a guy like Gus Edwards and Justice Hill who combined in the second half, I believe it was for like 9 touches or something like that. I'd have to look it up, but as far as Lamar goes, it definitely wasn't his best game, and I've been an avid Lamar supporter. I think what he's done throughout the season's been anything like we've seen before, but it wasn't his best game. But I don't. The blame doesn't fall solely on him. Absolutely not. I think you can point to a lot of other things that went wrong for the Ravens. But the thing I look at here is he had such a great season and is going to be the runaway MVP when it ends up being like this. But when you look back on it, the main point people will talk about is what happened. They'll talk about this playoff game. They'll say he had such a great season, but when it mattered, he choked. So he's got a lot of room to improve. We've seen that. Now it's 2 years in a row that a team's played a heavy defensive back kind of game and had players spying him and really punishing him through just stacking the box and just putting people up there. And 2 years in a row we've seen it, and I can't argue with that. That's a blueprint the teams have followed. I think it was either Kevin Byard or Logan Ryan said they followed a blueprint the Buffalo Bills had, and the Bills were, in my opinion, the best team to contain Lamar Jackson up to the Titans game. So credit to the Dean Pease. He's a guy who's been in the league a very long time, and for all we've seen Lamar Jackson really kind of beat defenses this year, this was the other way around, and there's no doubting that. I mean, you can give him all he wants for the numbers he put up, but even he'll tell you that it doesn't matter. They lost, so that's really the kind of outcome from it.
I will say this. I always had this feeling with this Raven team throughout the year, as great of a run as it was, that I always thought they were a year ahead of schedule. because they did so much to fix the offense. And Joe, I've been so vocal about some of the issues that the Raven defense had and their glowing weaknesses. So I always thought this team was a year ahead of win playoffs, knowing, hey, okay, I'll just enjoy the ride, and we'll see where this goes, whether it's to the Super Bowl, conference championship, or whatever. I was just disappointed that they came out so flat. But the other thing was, I think, Joe, the other thing that a lot of Raven fans forgot, because they got on this 12-game win streak, we knew Lamar Jackson has developed as a passer. He's much better than he was last year, but he isn't a finished product. He's not going to be able to throw 49 times. He still has deficiencies in his passing game that the Titans exploited. The other thing is, we knew the defense was bad. We knew this was not a stout run defense. But because we were winning these games, I think a lot of fans just said, oh, it's okay. We can still win. And to me, Tennessee just proved basically all the flaws with the Ravens in this one. Proved as a passer, but he's not there yet. And it's not a criticism on him because he's in his second year. But we know that he's progressed, but he hasn't progressed to the point where he can carry a team. And he may never be able to carry a team throwing 49 times. That may just not be his game. So you had to know that going in. You also had to know the defense is bad. The defense needed to be retooled. And we saw the Niners run all over them. The Bills ran all over them. And you were facing probably the hottest running back in football in Derrick Henry. So you had these weaknesses that got overshadowed because of this 12-game win streak that, to me, showed their head Saturday night, and Tennessee exploited all of them. And that's basically what happened, is that's how they won the game.
Yeah, I look at it when we watched it. If you watch the Sunday game when the Chiefs went down 24-0 to the Texans, there's just a difference between an offense like that can come back with a guy like Patrick Mahomes and put up 28 points in the second quarter compared to a guy like Lamar Jackson, who in an offense that is just, in my opinion, not polished yet. They have a lot of pieces to add, especially in the wide receiver core. Mark Andrews was dealing with a high ankle sprain, so it doesn't help when your leading receiver, which is a tight end anyway, isn't 100%. But you look at a team like the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, who can light up a scoreboard and put up 50 points in like 3 quarters. The Ravens just aren't that kind of team. Lamar Jackson is the same kind of quarterback as Patrick Mahomes, but I agree with you. They're not a finished product, and I don't think we ever thought that, or most people didn't, but this was a wake-up call for people who thought this was one of the best teams in the NFL, and we talked about them like it because they won so many games, but they are some pieces away, and the front office, I'm sure, knows that. They acknowledge that. There's going to be some changes on the defensive side of the ball. There are a lot of guys who are pending free agents on that side of the ball that the Ravens will have to make some decisions on about, but this is a team that will continue to build during the offseason. There's definitely a lot of reason for optimism. I mean, as much as we talk about this game being a disappointment, there's a lot of reason for optimism, but it shows you that they still got some ways to go. This is not a team. Yeah, I mean, and that's a fair criticism. I think we can all take off the purple sunglasses after 12 straight games and realize that this team has a lot of improvements to make, and they're not a complete team. And you have to give credit to the Titans for being able to develop a game plan to beat Lamar Jackson, but we've got to give the benefit of the doubt to Greg Roman in the front office to be able to adapt to that going forward and try to combat that, because they've made an offense that had success this season, and they've got to tweak it and figure out what they can do, because teams are going to see what the Titans did, what the Bills did, and what the Chargers did last year and start employing that more. You're going to see a lot more smaller defensive backs, smaller, faster linebackers. So I think that's kind of what we're going to see combating some of these types of dual threat quarterbacks, who Lamar Jackson is just the first of many to be in this league coming up. But I'm still optimistic going forward, but you can't deny that this team is still some time away from being one of the best in the NFL. And that showed on Saturday.
Right. And honestly, it's not that big of a fix, in my opinion. It's tweaking things. The offense is pretty much set. Maybe another receiver, but honestly, I just get rid of Seth Roberts and get somebody that can catch a football other than him. Honestly, I look at the defense, fix the linebacking group, because if you go back and watch that game, there's a lot of criticism of the front. And I don't think it's right that everybody gets blamed. I watched Brandon Williams. He moved guys. Now, he didn't make tackles, but he moved offensive linemen. If there's one criticism I have of Brandon Williams, he allowed himself to get turned a lot of times. And what I mean is he allowed himself to get turned to over, but he never got. And I've seen that narrative of, oh, he's not worth the $12 million. He got pushed around. No, Michael Pierce got pushed around. If there's anybody that should go, Michael Pierce can see the door stage left, as he got pushed around. So I have some issue with that. But you had no linebackers. When you did get penetration, that's what you saw on Saturday night. There was nobody that stepped up and made a tackle. And honestly, Joe, Matt Judon really disappointed me. That looked like, to me, a guy that did not want to go out and make a tackle. That 3rd and 1, I think it was 14-6. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 21-6 at the time. And man, defensive line gets a big hole, bust through the backfield. Matt Judon, all he has to do is make a tackle, Joe. At the line of scrimmage, Ravens get the ball back. It's a whole new game. What does he do? He throws a shoulder at Derrick Henry. Now, anybody that knows football knows you're not going to tackle Derrick Henry with a shoulder. And Matt Judon decided that was going to be his approach. He looked scared. He didn't look like he wanted to tackle. I was fairly disappointed with Matt Judon. Now, I know he's going to get a big contract, and he may get it from the Ravens, but he lost some points with me because you got to be willing to tackle no matter who it is, and he wasn't. So I was very disappointed in that aspect. But and the other thing, you were talking about the 12-game win streak, and we had the blinders on. We got lucky against the Niners. The Niners were not a full-strength defense when we faced them. If Josh Allen hits a couple throws, there were some guys open in that Bills game against the secondary. So it was. I think you're right. Everybody had the purple sunglasses on, and it was more. And a sight of, hey, there are some flaws with this team, and they eventually will catch up with us. And it just happened to be in the playoffs when you aren't playing the cupcakes anymore. That doesn't, to me, decrease Lamar Jackson. That doesn't decrease this team. It just says, hey, they weren't there yet. This was not a finished product. This was a work in progress. Your offense is clearly legit. Your offense is pretty stable for next year. Now you just build a defense that goes with it. And I think from what I've read and what I've heard, that's what Eric DeCosta is so focused on this offseason. Get D linemen, get linebackers, shore up that secondary, really shore up that defense. A complete team. That to me was what we didn't have. We didn't have a complete team.
You can only do so much during the middle of the season. I give credit to Eric DeCosta for revamping it as much as you can. But if you look at the snap counts from Saturday's game, Josh Bynes played 38 snaps, and LJ Fort played 16 snaps. Those are theoretically your two inside starting linebackers. And the Ravens can combat that by having 6 defensive backs on the field at one time. But with as loaded of a secondary that they have, that only works so much. You've got to have big guys in the middle. This is a game where I thought they missed the C.J. Mosley going against a guy like Derrick Henry, who's so big. I just didn't think Josh Bynes and L.J. Ford are just fast enough around the edge or just physical enough on the inside to really stop him. And that's not a knock on those guys. So they've had a great impact with the Ravens since coming in week 4, week 5 of the season. But these are guys that you signed who got either was Josh Bynes was sitting on the couch getting signed, and LJ Fort was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles. So this wasn't necessarily the cream of the crop guys you were getting, but there's still solid pieces. Bynes could be a sneaky guy you resign, and LJ Fort's already got a 2-year extension to stay in Baltimore. But I agree with you that an inside linebacker is going to be one of the biggest needs, and we'll touch on that coming into the offseason. There's a lot to talk about and a long offseason to go. I wanted to ask you about the 2 4th-and-1 plays. So there were both 4th-and-1s that the Ravens couldn't convert. One was Lamar trying to kind of sneak up the middle, and another one was one that he looked like he had some room up the middle but cut it outside. Both obviously did not get converted. For a team that had such great success during the regular season with 4th downs on 4th-and-1s and just being very analytically driven throughout the season, being aggressive in that aspect. I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that, and did you agree with those calls at the time?
So I agree with one of the 2 calls. I thought the one in the 3rd quarter, the 4th and inches, I have no problem with that one because that was your best drive of the game. You were only down one score. The way you were going, you weren't guaranteed you were going to get back down there. I had no problem with that one. The 4th and 1 at your own 40, that's the one that really burned me. And that's the one that I really didn't like because you'll hear this with coaches. Some, like Sarah mentioned it with Greg Roman, he has this great feel for making calls and always has that right adjustment to make in game. Well, I'm beginning to realize I don't think John Harbaugh has that, Joe. I don't think he has a great feel for the game because in that situation, I'm sitting on my couch watching that game going, you can't go for it there. You're getting pushed around up front. Your defense has made one stop, didn't make a stop the last drive. You gave up a touchdown. Tennessee is feeling themselves right now. You don't get this first down. All of a sudden, is going to run away with this one because the momentum was already teetering. And unfortunately, he made a bad decision. And it goes to a point that I'm beginning to feel when I watch the Ravens. Analytics is nice. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind having all the numbers. I don't mind having it, but you can't make it solely your decision making. And John Harbaugh, more times than not here, is letting the numbers drive his decision instead of sitting there and having a feel for the game. And you got to know in that situation, if you don't get it, you are going to be down 14-0. And credit to Tennessee, they got to stop it right out and they chucked the end zone. That's exactly what you do in a spot like that if you have a feel for the game. I really think if they'd have punted the ball away, pinned Tennessee deep, maybe that game doesn't get as out of hand because you're still in it and you're not all of a sudden down 14-0 going, oh my God, we're repeating last year. And the other thing is, and I'll mention it again later, Lamar Jackson wasn't himself. I don't know what it was. He looked rattled. He didn't play in himself. He was trying to do too much. And that's a coaching thing. You're on the sideline. You've got to pull that guy aside and say, Lamar, you're trying to do too much. And on both of those 4th down plays, Lamar tried to do too much. He tried to make a big play on the 4th and inches. He panicked instead of just going straight forward and hoping you get the first down on the 4th and Bozeman. I mean, that's where you can criticize Lamar a little bit, but my issue is with John Harbaugh. You had no feel for the game, and you hung your second-year quarterback out to dry. You let him just do too much and make mistakes, and now everybody's blaming him, and it's on you. It's on you. You let this happen, John.
I didn't necessarily have a problem with the decision to go for it on 4th downs. I had a problem with the play call. I thought that Patrick McCary and Bradley Bozeman were getting worked physically up front by Jarrell Casey, Jeffrey Simmons, and that Titans defensive line. That's why I was so baffled to see them try to go kind of 2 QB sneaks. But why not just, I don't know, hand it off to Gus Edwards, try something outside. I know people say it's too cute to try to do something like that on 4th and 1, but when you're getting physically dominated on the inside of the interior offensive line, you got to try something else. But you go into that play call knowing that if you don't get it, it's a complete momentum swing. So, we don't know exactly what goes into it. I know that they talk about that they have an analytics guy sitting up with Greg Roman in the booth going through all that stuff. But in the end, we don't know exactly what the decisions are, what kind of goes all through it. It'd be something I'd love to ask John Harbaugh just exactly what that decision goes through it. I know they won't talk about it because it's analytics or secrets, and they have their own ways that they do things and whatnot. But for me, it was more of a problem of just the play calls rather than the decision go for it itself. I just didn't think, to me, field goals were going to be that big of a momentum for you, and the offense really wasn't getting that much production anyway. I think you can make an argument that the field goal on the first 4th and 1 would have given you, I think it would have made it 14-9 or one of those. It would have given you within a 1-score game. So sure, you can argue with the momentum there. I think you got a point there, Dave, but to me, I just was not a fan of the play calls. And when Lamar Jackson's throwing 59 times, I don't care how good of a passer he gets over the course of his career. That's just not the formula to win with him. I think we know that. It's a team that rushed over 200 yards a game, and I get that you're starting running backs out with a calf injury, but we saw even without Lamar Jackson and with Gus Edwards as a starting running back, you can still have success. And just it bothered me to see them get away from it because I feel as good as Greg Roman has been and how creative he has been, when he gets into a spot when the Ravens have to play behind, you don't have to abandon the run. You don't have to go to this pass-happy offense. You can still grind out the clock, and this is an offense that we've seen be able to score in with running the ball and doing what they do. To me, it just you get down 14-0, and it feels like it's panic mode. It's like you're running around with your hair on fire. That's just what it kind of looked like to me. And I'm not a coach. I'm not Greg Roman. I'm not as experienced as all these coaching guys. So this is just my opinion from the outside looking in. But when you're a team that's predicated on running the ball, and the Tennessee Titans didn't have a very stout defensive run defense. They weren't the Pittsburgh Steelers who the Ravens ran all over. They weren't some of the top rushing defenses, but just to see the Ravens get away from that was just very frustrating from the outside looking in.
I'm going to push back a little bit because I think you have confused the fourth downs I was talking about. The one at your own 40 in the first quarter. You mentioned Makari was getting pushed back. Bozeman,
Right.
Even Yonda to an extent, were getting pushed back. That's not the time to do it when you're only down 7-0 and you're down 4-6 going for it. That one I have no problem. That's where you have a feel for the game. Joe, I'll give you a perfect example. Third game and I'm calling plays this year. We play Francis Scott Key. You've heard it. You know of Key. They run a wing T offense. If you know football, folks, wing T is a very old style of football. Well, guess what? I didn't have a great feel for the game in that game. We lost 20-0, and the reason is I couldn't make an adjustment. Like Greg Roman, he stayed with his game plan, which for some reason was passing the football. That one I'll never understand. And you got beat. And I got beat in my game, and Greg Roman got beat because he had. So I'm all on the boat with you. I can't understand Greg Roman when so much of your offense is predicated on running the football. Why you got away from it? Not to mention that Gus Edwards had 2 carries for 19 yards, and he got 19 of them on 1 carry. And you get away from that in a game where you know what Tennessee's going to try to do? It made no sense from his standpoint, but John Harbaugh just not having a feel for the game. Like you said, Makari, Bozeman, you got to watch them. They're getting beat. And when you're in your own territory, only down 7-0 is not the time to say, balls to the wall, guys. We're going to go for it because you're getting dominated up front. And they got dominated all game. So you're absolutely right. The play call was questionable, but the decision to me by John Harbaugh is even more questionable because you know you were getting dominated. You're much better off kicking the ball away and forcing Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry to go set him up on a short. It just made no sense to me, Joe. And John Harbaugh, great coach. I give him a lot of credit, but the team was unprepared to play. They looked overmatched, outcoached, and he had horrible decision-making, which tells me his feel for the game is not very good. And he relies so much on the numbers because I don't think he can feel what happens in a game very well.
We saw the starters rest in Week 17, and there was more debate about this as well. Do you think that really did attribute to it, the rust, or is that overplayed?
I think to an extent it does, especially considering, and I want to give a lot of shout out Ryan Rousseau, Chris Long, their podcast. If you get after you hear ours, Chris Long mentioned that the mesh point between Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards, and even Mark Ingram when he was in there, didn't look right. The decision making between them was off. And I think that's where you attribute the rust. They haven't been in game situations for 3 weeks, and it showed. The decisions were not great. There were times where I thought Lamar Jackson should have handed it off, and you'd have gotten 4 or 5 yards, and I thought he tucked it because he was trying to make a play. Maybe he was trying to do too much, and that's where, again, as a coach, you got to pull him aside and tell him to back it off a little bit. But I do think there was rust. Now, I don't think there was rust on the defense because a lot of those guys played. In fact, the 2 guys that didn't play, I thought played well for a while, and Brandon Williams and Earl Thomas, both in that first half, were flying around and making plays. So I don't think it affected the defense. I do think it affected the offense. And I tell you what, and I mentioned it on Twitter, even Kansas City looked bad. looked rusty early. So I I think that 3 weeks, and I think John Harbaugh will do it differently next year. I don't think you can give 3 weeks to this young of a team. I think everybody kind of forgets that the last time the Ravens rested starters in Week 17, they played Wild Card Weekend, so it wasn't like they were resting for the 2 or 3 weeks like this team was. They rested a week because they had a playoff game the next week. That's just the issue I had. Is it did look like the rust affected the offense.
Yeah, now the Ravens are, I think, 3-4 in home playoff games at M&T Bank Stadium. So the road through Baltimore has not been a very difficult one for opponents. If I'm the Ravens, and just from my perspective, I don't want them to play in the divisional round on the first round bye. I want them to go in through the wild card and either on the road or grind their way up. It just seems like that team, this kind of team's always been the one that's had success in Baltimore. But I agree with you to an extent that rust does play a factor, and especially on the offensive side of the ball, they started out so flat. But to say Russ played an entirely part of the game takes away from how good the Titans played. There's no rust when Jonnu Smith makes a great catch on a great throw from Ryan Tannehill, and he was in. I mean, he got the cheek in. I don't care how you want to say it, but Russ just doesn't take away how great Derrick Henry played, and he was running over the Ravens, and this wasn't just an anomaly. He was running over the Patriots the week before, so it's not much of a surprise, but I agree with you to the fact that the offense did look flat. I don't think it helps when two of your best starters are injured, and it just, I think that definitely played a part. Mark Ingram just did not look like himself. You saw him with a wrap on his leg. Hopefully he can just get healthy and come back 100% for the start of the next season. But you look at that, one of the drives against the Cleveland Browns in the end of the season. I mean, you could just attribute that. I think Jeff Zrebiak put it great, saying that if there was I don't know how many play sequence it was, but Mark Ingram gets hurt, then you lose Mark Andrews to a high ankle sprain. It's just those two late injuries really did play an impact, in my opinion. And the Ravens are talented where they can succeed without those guys. But that's your leading receiver and your leading rusher, not named Lamar Jackson, not 100% against the Titans. And even if you were to win that game, you still face a tough matchup, probably against the Kansas City Chiefs anyway. But I agree with you. I don't think Harbaugh does it the same way that he did last year if the Ravens do end up making the playoffs. And they might not even have to make that decision because who knows there's no guarantee that they're AFC North champs or first round bye going into the AFC playoffs next year. But it was just weird. It was just a weird game. I just want to forget it, to be completely honest. And I know the Ravens do too, because they had the expectation that they wanted to play for a Super Bowl. A lot of guys were talking about when they were cleaning out the lockers that they expected to be preparing for the AFC Championship game the next week. It was just one of those games that I just look back on, and last year too, you just watch it and they go down early and it's just frustrating. I just don't really feel like the Ravens ever had a chance in that game. There was part of it, I mean, before when you get the field goal before the first half that you probably should have scored a touchdown on after Lamar hits Marquise Brown for a really long pass and you get within in the red zone, but you only end up with a field goal and you're down still one score, and you start the second half with the ball, but then you turn it over. Just those things like that just made me feel like they never really had a chance in this game, and that's just kind of weird to say, but it was just really frustrating. Go back and watch that game and tell me that you don't have the same kind of feeling.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned, because I thought that was such a missed 2-minute drill by the coaching staff and by the offense, because they got across midfield, had a minute to go, and hadn't used the timeout yet. Save yourself some time so that when you hit the deep ball to Marquise Brown, you have 2 or 3 plays. You have 2 or 3 shots to the end zone. Instead, they used their first timeout, I think, with 35 seconds left. That's inexcusable to me. Do that, trying to use the timeout earlier, and all of a sudden you have maybe 10, 11 seconds, and you can throw twice to the end zone, as opposed to, I think they ended, after Brown made that catch, Joe, maybe you can correct me, I thought they had 7 seconds left. So they really only had one shot to the end zone. It was so poorly mismanaged. You had an opportunity to really have a chance to take some shots. And I disagree. They still had opportunities in that game. I really do. But because of some of the mismanagement by the coaching staff and the decision-making, they put themselves out of the game. Now, I don't think they would have won, but they're not losing 28-12. They might have lost 21-17 because at the end of the day, Tennessee was the more physical, the tougher team, and they would have grinded that out, but the Ravens would have been in the game and may have won it because they're an overall more talented team, but it was such a poorly mismanaged game that they put themselves behind the eight ball so early in the game that they had no chance to come back. And that's where my issue lies, is with the coaching staff. The only one I cut some slack to is Don Martindale, because as we discussed, he hadn't had the horses all year. We knew he had some deficiencies. He tried to cover it up, but he faced a team that had the right game plan to beat the Raven defense. So I cut him some slack because, trust me, when a team's running all over you and you've thrown everything at them, there's not much else you can do other than let's just hope that we make a play once on a third down and force them to punt. And it just didn't happen. But the offense and John Harbaugh, they take a lot of blame for this one.
Yeah, look at the second half. You come out down 14-6. You turn the ball over on 4th and 1. Tennessee comes back and scores a touchdown. Then you fumble, and then Derrick Henry throws a touchdown pass in one of those sequences. And then you throw an interception. It's just that sequence out of the half when you had a lot of momentum going in, down one score, is just so disheartening and just so detrimental to the Ravens in that particular instance. Because I think if you get a touchdown instead of a field goal before the half, it's just, I'm feeling so much better coming into the third quarter. I mean, and we can agree to disagree on the point of, did we really feel like they had a chance? I don't know. Just watching it in the sequence and just the way it happened, when you have Derrick Henry throwing jump passes and you're just getting beat like that, it just kind of seems like they're throwing out all the cards and the Ravens really don't have an answer to it. So either way, it just was a disappointing end to what we thought could be a very special season for this team. There's a lot of discussion that we're going to get into in the offseason about who's going to be coming back, how the Ravens can kind of make this team better, how they can improve on both sides of the ball. There's a lot of free agent decisions coming up, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and a lot of interesting things we can talk about. But, you know, we can beat this with a dead horse all we want. And I think we've done a good job breaking it down. But you know, we could either lie, and neither of us could lie saying that we were disappointed in that outcome. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was. I was disappointed in how flat they were. That really bothers me because that, again, I attribute a lot of that to the coaching staff. So that was probably the most disappointing thing. And then not bailing out your quarterback when you knew Lamar Jackson was trying to do too much. It just, that's what leaves, Joe, the bad taste in my mouth. Was I just think the coaching staff hung the team out to dry. And I don't like doing it when I'm a coach. I try to be as prepared as I am, and I just don't think the Ravens staff was. So that's what leaves the bad taste in my mouth. Everything else, the players on the field, we were a year ahead of schedule, and I'll buy that. Now, I will say this. Probably you're a damn fool if you think you need to go out and spend big money on a wide receiver, because that wasn't the big reason why you lost. You gave up 195 yards to Derrick Henry. You need to fix the defense. And if you try to tell me, you Raven fans, that you need to sign receivers and that the offense is the bigger priority, don't listen to us. I don't want you listening to our show because you're not the type of Raven fan that we want. We want the intelligent fan here. We need defense. I'll get off my soapbox.
We need that. Get it all out, man. We need to get this all out. We need to go into the offseason fresh and completely cleanse. It's our cleansing show to get away from everything. But we'll have a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of ways the Ravens can go and a lot of differing opinions. I think that's good, makes for good conversation. I know you're going to get upset, and there's a lot of different, arguments that can be made from all parties, but it makes for good conversation. I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, the Ravens have to do a lot of things on the defensive side of the ball. I do like that they've shored up the secondary to a point. They've got some decisions to make on Jimmy Smith, the contract option for Brandon Carr they need to make in the offseason. Michael Pierce is an unrestricted free agent. Josh Bynes is an unrestricted free agent. Domata Pecco's an unrestricted free agent, and a lot of other guys are as well. Matthew Judon is, but you've got the possibility of slapping the franchise tag on him if you can't hit a long-term deal, which I think the Ravens will ultimately do because it doesn't seem like either side. You can also potentially make a decision on a long-term contract for Marlon Humphrey, which you're going to have to do sooner or later if you think he's a legitimate piece to this secondary, which I do think he does. He proved that this year. He was an all-pro. So a lot of decisions the Ravens can make, especially even on the offensive side of the ball with Ronnie Stanley. He's going in his fifth-year option now. Guy that's your left tackle, and I didn't think he had a great game. That still doesn't take away the fact that he is my most important player on the offensive line, protecting Lamar Jackson, because from all accounts, it looks like, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it looks like Mark Rihanna might have played his last snap with the Ravens. An interior offensive line is going to be a huge, huge, huge thing going forward because Matt Skura revealed that he tore his ACL, MCL, PCL, and dislocated his kneecap. If you know anything, that is just a gruesome injury. The injuries are definitely easier to get back from than they were, but there's no guarantee that he's healthy to start the season. So you're looking at Orlando Brown Jr. on the right side, Ronnie Stanley as your left tackle, presumably Bradley Bozeman as your left guard. Are you rolling with Patrick McCary and Ben Powers as your center and your right guard? Probably not. I wouldn't guess the Ravens want to do that. They're going to be a team predicated on running the ball as much as they do and continuing to be one of the top rushing teams. So I don't want to get into it too much, but there is a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation we'll have this offseason about all of this. There's going to be a lot that plays out.
Lastly, if I see any Raven fan, Joe, mention that Antonio Brown should be a Raven, I will personally find you, and we are going to talk because you need some sense knocked into you.
If you saw his Instagram video recently, that's all you need to know. The guy's not going to play another down in the NFL.
I know, but I saw some Raven fans say, oh, AB would be great. Let's bring him with his cousin. You need to be smacked.
You need to stop following those people on Twitter, Dave. That's your problem. That's your problem.
Joe, you're absolutely
You need to filter them out. You need to filter them out, Dave. Mute them, block them. We don't need that in our life here.
All right, Joe. I got on my soapbox about the defense and free agency. Go ahead. I think you need to vent a little bit, bud. You're looking a little rough over there.
No, man, I'm good. I don't know. I'm an internal optimist. I always a little more than you are, which I like because we can't be the same here on this show. But I kind of went on my thing that I just thought it was just very frustrating. I had a lot of expectations for this team, and I legitimately thought they could compete and win a Super Bowl. When you see how well they played against a lot of those teams during the season, they gave you hope and that could happen. But no, I mean, they exceeded expectations. If you take a look about it, they didn't exceed expectations with how it resulted in the playoffs. But if you would have told me this team would have been 14-2 and a first round bye in the AFC playoffs before the beginning of the season, I would have told you that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, we were talking about this team potentially compete for a wild card spot, hopefully. And then Lamar Jackson, we didn't think Lamar Jackson would make the jump that he did. I didn't. 99% of the people didn't. We didn't think he was going to be an MVP. If he was, I would have tossed $100 on his 75-1 odds. Wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. I'd be spending like $5,000 that I'd be winning from Vegas. But
appreciate that.
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, thanks, man.
No. But you know what I mean. I mean, this team, in all accounts, exceeded expectations, and we're all going to focus on the one game that ended in disappointment. But there's a lot of reason for optimism, and call me wearing the purple sunglasses, but that's just the reality that this team has a lot of pieces moving forward and a young nucleus on offense that we can be happy about. Lamar Jackson, a young offensive line, some young wide receivers. I think once Marquise Brown is fully recovered from whatever he was dealing with this year going into his second year, he showed a lot of flashes that I was very excited about, and this tight end group has a lot to be said too. Mark Andrews is solidifying himself as a top 5 guy in the league. Absolutely. So we'll see. There's a lot going into here, and take a look. We'll see how it plays out in the AFC Championship, NFC Championship, and the Super Bowl. But I mean, this is a team that expectation comes next year is they're going to be they should be competing for the division title in the playoffs again. Absolutely.
All right, Joe. Before we get out of here, AFC, NFC picks. Who's going to the Super Bowl?
I'll go Chiefs, Packers.
All right, well, I'm going Titans-Packers because I don't think the Chiefs – I said it on our other show. I don't think the Chiefs can slow down Derrick Henry. He's run through 2 better defenses. That's my thing. So I think they'll roll because is going to be able to score with less possessions. That's my thing. So I take the Titans.
Yeah, Chiefs don't have a great run defense, but the way they can score the ball, I saw a tweet that literally in the game they ran out of fireworks because the Chiefs were scoring. That's just laugh out loud funny. That's just hilarious. But that offense is just insane, absolutely insane, and it's gonna be a great game. Both championship weekend games are gonna be awesome. Two rematches. The Titans beat the Chiefs in Tennessee on a very kind of weird game too, but. I don't know. I'm rooting for the Titans because we know what Mike Vrabel guaranteed if he wins the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah,
So let's not get into that. So we'll have to slap it.
That's for the Titan Brawl.
Yeah, we'll have to slap this with an explicit tag on
Guys,
iTunes and Apple Music. So,
the basics of
yeah. No, but
I do think the Packers upset the Niners.
I see we both agree on that too.
Yeah.
That'll be a great game. And Seahawks Packers last week was great. Two of the best quarterbacks going at it. So we'll see. A lot of people have kind of talked about the Packers as a team that was too good to be true, but man, they keep winning. They got a talented squad there. They have a very talented squad. So hopefully we're talking. Go ahead.
Here's the thing about that game. The Packers got embarrassed the first time. They are embarrassed this time. That's their motivation going into this one, is that they got their butts kicked by 30 points to the Niners the first time they played. And I don't know about you, Joe. Aaron Rodgers looked pretty damn good Sunday twirling the ball. So you can finish, but that's my thing. Packers are going to win that game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I said Packers as well. So hopefully when it comes next year and we're doing this podcast, we're talking about the team from Baltimore in the AFC Championship. I sure hope so.
You got it.
I sure hope so.
Let's end this very, very sorrow-filled podcast. We will be back next week. We have a great guest. We'll tease that out a little bit. But we will be back. We're going to take a week off for the Super Bowl, and then we'll grind into the off season, and we'll discuss some things like the draft. We have some great draft people we know, so we're going to churn out the great content for you guys. But it's a very disappointing end to the 2019 Baltimore Ravens season, and it brings an end to this podcast. For Joe Schiller, I'm Dave Stumwater. We will talk to you all next week. Until then, you can check us out, a part of the Brawl Network. You can check out all the other great Brawl podcasts, including the Niners, the Packers, and the Titans. Find out what they're doing to prepare for the AFC and NFC championship games. And we will talk about the offseason next week.